Thank you for tuning in to the best parenting show on the internet, Post Daily Dose.
It's the Post. It's the Post. It's the Post. The Post Daily Dose. It's the Post. It's the Post. It's the Post. The Post Daily Dose. It's the Post. It's the Post. It's the Post. The Post Daily Dose. It's the Post. It's the Post. It's the Post. The Post Daily Dose. It's the Post. It's the Post. It's the Post. The Post Daily Dose.
Hey there, everybody. This is Christy Saul, the co-founder of the Post+Institute, coming at you live on this wonderful Wednesday. I hope everybody's having a blessed day today and getting ready for the best little parenting show on the internet. First, I want to plug these two books real quick. Brian's book, From Fear to Love, that you can get on promotion at feartolovebook.com. And this book right here, The Great Behavior Breakdown, you can find that at postinstitute.com and also on Amazon. And we have this incredible workbook that Brian wrote for this book in particular. I'm waiting for my copy to come from Amazon. I just got it completed in terms of having it all laid out in their print on demand, and my fingers are crossed that it looks fabulous and it's going to be wonderful. I know the workbook, what we have on the website right now is a digital version, so you can grab it there, but for workbooks, for me, I kind of like to have something I can hold in my hand, so I can't wait to get that. So if you guys have been following our page for the last few days, we've been on a series, which is like novel for me to actually have a continued flow of thought over the course of several days. So it's been really fun. And what we've been doing is talking about preparing for 2021. I've been posting a link to these handouts that are free on our website. It's printables and some printables and handouts. I think it's like a real clever name there. And what's included in these handouts we've been talking about over the last few days, and I'm going to continue on that. And I see a lot of different people tuned in. Anybody who wants to say hi, I'd love to hear from you. And just really quick, I want to tell you how much I appreciate you guys sharing this time with me, because time is a very valuable commodity, isn't it? So on the first night, we talked about this 4-point handout, Brian+Post's 4-point trauma-informed daily checklist. And what I realized after reading it is this is an excellent place to start in terms of looking at goals that you may want to set for yourself with regard to parenting. You know, when it comes to New Year's resolutions, hey Mimi, when it comes to New Year's resolutions, a lot of times people focus on their finances, or they focus on like weight loss and fitness, and but rarely do people spend time creating resolutions, goals related to their relationships. And yet our relationships they just play such a vital role in how we function. You know, for example, it's really hard to reach a weight loss goal if you're feeling unfulfilled in your relationships, if you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling like your emotional needs aren't being met. And so this activity that we've been engaging in, I think, will not only enhance the relationship, but also, and your spouses and your friends. I mean, you know, this can go in whatever direction you need it to go, and it will enhance all aspects of your life. So the first night we looked at the 4-point trauma-informed daily checklist. And then yesterday we looked at the emotional guidance scale. It was really interesting for me reading through that and reading the information I had included, because I actually wrote that, golly, it's probably been 8 or 9 years now. And when I wrote it, it was just as I was actively using the scale. And so my own personal experience of how helpful this is was something we talked a little bit last night. And I just realized I mentioned a story. I was sharing a story last night about a woman I did some coaching with, and she was super overwhelmed. She has 4 children, all adopted. had become a single mother, and was also helping with her own mother, and was just like, like she said, it's like all I can do to get up and get the kids to school. That feels like the biggest accomplishment of the day, and I completely understood. And so we talked about taking tiny little steps, and I realized last night I just left the story hanging. So, the first tiny little step that I encouraged her to take was to go sit outside, because she was talking about how much she loved nature and she just wasn't even feeling like getting out. And so we talked about just one tiny little step, and that tiny little step was to spend 5 minutes sitting on her step, just to go sit outside for 5 minutes. And so she was able to do that. And then we talked about 6 months later, and she had started thinking about enrolling in school. And then I looked up on my personal Facebook, and a year later, she had finished going to school. She went back to school, became an esthetician. She looks incredible in her pictures. She now has a romantic interest. Her children have all finished high school. Some of them are working. Others are doing things that they need to be doing for their personal growth, and they're all doing really well. And it's not like I don't want to make it sound like what I did was magic, but we can get so overwhelmed trying to take on the big picture that sometimes we just need to break it into tiny little steps. And that's what this process that we're talking about is encouraging. So as we think about New Year's resolutions and resolutions for your family, resolutions for yourself and your parenting journey, we want to talk about tiny little steps. And everybody's steps are going to be different because everybody's in a different place. So the handouts that are available to help you in this journey they're really effective, and they're also broad enough that you can do what you need to do in this process of improving the relationships with your children, and if you're married, with your spouse or your partner. So the other handout is this sheet that is filled with teeny tiny little squares, and here's an example of it in use. And actually, this all came from my daughter, which to me makes it even more incredible. So I laid it out after she showed it to me. I laid it out just, on the squares. And so across the top are the months of the year, and down the side is 31. And so there's 365 squares on this sheet of paper. Now, this is it's a mood monitor. And so you pick whatever colors you want to represent whatever you want it to represent. Like on this example, it just talks about amazing, good, average, boring, confusing, not good, frustrated, depressing, awful, no day. Like if there was no day, like maybe there was no day because there wasn't a day of that month, because not all months have 31 days. So what you do is at the end of the day, you color in your square with whatever color fits. What is beautiful about this is it helps you to be able to track trends really easily, because we can get so busy with life that we don't really have our finger on the pulse of how we're feeling. We talked about that a little bit last night, how we can be operating at such a pace where we're just doing, and we rarely pause to check in and see how we're really feeling. And yet these feelings and these moods end up being spewed on our loved ones, because we may not realize how stressed we may be or how tired we may be. And then when you can notice trends, that can give you information about things like, what else was going on around that time? Is this hormonal? Does this have to do with my nutrition? Does this have to do with my sleep? Am I trying to do too much? Am I trying to multitask? It can give you insight into shifts that you may need to make so that you're able to have more consistency. The other thing, my daughter does hers every night, which I think is really cool. It really helps her to be able to just it gives her a place to be able to say, this is how I'm doing authentically, no judgment, no self-judgment. Nobody's judging her about any of it. And this isn't a pass or fail. There's no right or wrong answer. This is just an assessment. And the other thing that I thought was really cool, and it came from one of her very good friends. So we do this every year on New Year's Day. We started it about 3 years ago. They found it. We laid it out. I went and bought everybody journals at the dollar store. And so they left the house on New Year's Day and began tracking, their mood tracking. So the next year, one of her friends came back on New Year's so we could do this. And she said, one of the things I realized is I don't have to color my square just one color. I can color my square lots of different colors. And I also learned that just because maybe I have a tough morning doesn't mean my whole day was bad. So I can acknowledge that I have tough moments during the day, but I also have really good moments. And I didn't realize that until I was doing this sheet. So I feel like that within itself is absolute gold, because all of us can get trapped in that absolute thinking. Our brains have this way of protecting. It's a self-protection where we get hyper-focused on things that aren't going right. It's a way that our amygdala gets flipped, and then, we just ruminate over something that didn't go well. You could have a million people who say lovely things to you, but that one person who says something negative or something that hurts your feelings, and you hyper focus on that. And so this kind of activity can help broaden our perspective of how we're really doing. You may be doing much better than you ever thought, but until you sit down and you start making note of it, then those good moments may get lost. And being able to see trends and then notice what those trends may also be connected to is extremely, extremely valuable. So before I wrap up today, one of the things I want you guys to do, if you're going to follow along in this activity, is I want you to spend some time being thoughtful about take an honest assessment of where are you right now? How are the relationships in your family? How are the relationships with your children? How are the relationships with your spouse? A lot of times there may be conflict or discord in the marital relationship, and we may be addressing that or not addressing that in a way that we think our kids don't know, but they do. They may not know the details, but they have like extrasensory perception. They're super plugged in to the emotions in the atmosphere for the purpose of survival. They have a very sensitive amygdalas for their self-protection. And so when things may be out of alignment in your marital relationship, it will have an effect on your entire family. So if you want a starting point, that may be the place to start. And so tomorrow night when we meet, we're going to talk about some things that you can do, like you can put yourself on a schedule with your spouse, some specific things that you can do to help create more connection, to help create a more solid foundation for the rest of your family, to help create relationships that are more fulfilling. As leaders of our family, our self-care is vital. It is so important. You are so important. You are the leader in your family. How you feel, how you're functioning will make the difference in how everybody else in your family is functioning. We set the thermostat. So our self-care is extremely important. And there was something, it was a post that I shared back on the 16th, but I noticed it came back around today, when people reshare things, then it comes up in the notifications, and it just felt so on the mark for what it is that we're doing. And it's written by Mary Mertouin, I believe is how you say it, from Vibe Source, and it's on self-improvement. If you're working on changing bad habits, unhealthy thought patterns, negative emotions, or toxic behaviors, know that you are healing a part of this world by healing yourself. Everyone around you will benefit, and they will be served by your wholeness. It's hard sometimes, and I know you want to quit, but this work is the work that ultimately changes the world. So, no pressure. No pressure. But know that the investment that you're making in your own heart, the position of your heart, that's what we're really working on. We're going to be working on like the unhealthy thought patterns. You know, we talk about for our children how their sensitive amygdala and their neuro pathways, their thoughts, it's like a Brian, I loved the way he said it. He said, imagine this great big field, and in this great big field is a path that's been worn because it's been walked down so many times. That's how our thoughts are. Our thoughts operate that same way, right? And in order to create a new pathway, it takes being really intentional and stepping outside of this path and stepping over in this really tall grass. And you have to do it repeatedly, and it takes intentional effort. And that's what this process that we're entering into as we step off into 2021 is all about. It's about becoming consciously aware. It's about shining the light into our subconscious, bringing these subconscious thoughts and these patterns of thinking into our conscious awareness so that we can actively choose. You can't actively choose when it's something that's coming out of your subconscious. So becoming more aware so that you can be more active in choosing your thoughts and be more active in understanding where all of this is coming from. If you have repetitive thoughts and places of emotion that you find yourself going to repeatedly, it is most likely that's coming from someplace in your pre-birth to early life experience. The things that we teach for our children are about humans. It's not just about our kids. We all have blueprints. We all have pre-birth and early life experiences. We all have things that flip our lid, and we all have the ability to have a strong oxytocin release mechanism to help calm that stress and anxiety that gets built up. And so, the more we actively work on this, the more we're going to be able to help our kids with the same processes. So tonight, spend some time taking an assessment of where you're really at. And think about where it is you'd like to be. What is it you'd like to be? How would you like to be relating in your family? What would have to happen for that to be different? And the things that we can control are the things within us. So that's why we're working here, because I know that what we do here will affect everything outside of us as well. And take time to set all that aside. Set all of that aside. Set anything you've been worried about today. Set it aside. You could just even, maybe you should just get like a shopping bag or something and just imagine putting all of that stuff that you've been worried about and stressed about. Just put it in that bag and set it down somewhere. And you can come back and pick that up anytime. Anytime. It's not going anywhere. You can come back and worry and stress and fret anytime. But set all of that aside. Give yourself about 5 minutes just to breathe and be still and get calm. And then go spend time with your children. Love on them. Let them feel the love that you have from them. Let it shine from your eyes. Let it shine from your heart. Enjoy them. That's why we have them. There's plenty of hours in the day for all the teaching and instructing and all of that. But in order for any of that teaching and instructing to be effective, you have to have relationship. Go play with them. Lounge around and watch TV with them. Play a game with them. If they're gamers, go watch them game. Lay with them, snuggle with them, read a book with them. Do something where you're engaged heart to heart with your children and just let them know how much you love and appreciate them. And remember what Brian tells us, that in any given moment, we have 2 choices. We can act out of those same blueprints of stress and fear and overwhelm, or we can take 1 to 2 to 3 deep breaths. You can choose that. Much love to you guys. I hope you have a blessed evening, and we'll see you all.
Join us live on weekdays at 6:30 Central Time on Facebook at the Post+Institute.
Don't forget to get your copy of Brian's best-selling book, From Fear to Love, on promotion.
Just pay shipping and handling at www.feartolovebook.com. That's www.feartolovebook.com.